Now, if I said, I don't want to grow up, what would you say? But if I sang, I don't want to grow up, what would you say? I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us. You'll really flip your lid. From bikes to trains to video games. It's the biggest toy store there is. Gee whiz. I don't want to grow up. Because baby, if I did, I couldn't be a Toys R Us kid. It's a jingle. We remember it, and I remember it several years in a row because my son would say, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school today. And it became this funny refrain that we'd use in our house for just saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want to grow up. I don't want to go to school. But today, I want to grow up. I want to become a boy my daddy knows well, because I've submitted to his design to grow me and transform me. Not only through his word, which we've been talking a lot about, but through the conduit of a relationship with him in prayer. I really think for a really long, good time portion of my life that I missed something. I missed something in this amazing resource of prayer. I remember being a youth pastor, and there was this little old lady in the church, and I probably shouldn't say her name, but I'm gonna, because it's a cute name for a little old lady who was a prayer warrior. Her name was Dolly Brown. And she said, son, pastor, don't you worry. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. And I knew she was praying. I knew it. And over the years, it's become kind of a mantra of mine. Hey, you know what? I need people praying for me, because prayer is powerful. But I think what that's become is my prayer life, because I believe God answers, because I believe God is all-knowing, because I believe he doesn't forget. Often my prayers are, Dear God, you know what I need. You know what's on my heart. Here you go. I trust you. And for a long time, I thought, well, I trust him. That's what faith looks like. But when I read this story, I'm starting to understand that God's design is much different than dropping a prayer on his lap and walking away. There's something about this petition and persistence of this widow that has to get our attention. There's something in the repetition of the daily coming to the judge and us coming to the Father, where, in fact, we see ourselves more clearly and we get to know God closer, and perhaps even his will is transforming us as we recognize that our selfish, carnal prayer that we started with is changing as we bring it to him each day. And our life is changing. This morning, I want to talk about the position of prayer, which is humility. It's on your knees before God, recognizing who he is and who we're not. We started with a call to worship that's from James and Luke. That reminds us to humble ourselves. But it's also the petition of prayer. And I think there's something there maybe not all of us have tapped into. We're not little boys and little girls anymore. Maybe we've developed some bad habits. Maybe we've never learned that, you know what? To be a proper child, you need to discipline yourself. And if I look at my life, I think my petitions need to be more constant and more consistent. Because it is not about the fact that I lay it on God's lap and I trust Him. It's about the fact that I'm coming to Him daily with my life. And when I come to Him daily in my life, I might see something different that I won't see if actually in my pride and arrogance, I've just dropped on His lap and said, God, I trust you. I know you're going to do what you're going to do in your time. But that coming again and again, it's not always reasonable to us how God answers or when God answers, or that He doesn't even answer me. And you miss that interplay. You don't get your carnality out if you're not having that discussion. Because see, we know that God is perfect, and I don't mean to give Him an excuse. He's not always reasonable how we think reasonable looks. But this is a cool word. Word. He's seasonable. He's seasonable, and maybe I'm starting to see that maybe things I've dropped on His lap have just sat there because nothing's changed in me. Now, God doesn't answer prayers necessarily because I change and now He can reward me. Grace doesn't work that way. But I want to step in a little bit and say, well, what does this persistent widow teach us? You know, most of the times when Jesus preaches or teaches a parable, He doesn't give the answer away. But when He does this in Luke 18, He does. He says, I'm teaching you that you ought always to pray and not grow weary. And then He begins to tell the story. And He tells this story about a certain widow in a certain town who goes again and again and again to a judge who's not a righteous judge, who doesn't care about people. He looks like some of the people we have in our courts, even Supreme Court. He doesn't care. But eventually it's expedient to him in his life to get rid of her. So he answers the prayer to keep her away. And what does Jesus say? He says that God, our God, is not like that. He doesn't answer us because we bother Him. And maybe that's why we have tricked ourselves in not coming again and again. Well, God, I don't want to bug you. I don't want to bug you, God. No. We need to remember that He's our daddy. He's our Father. He's our King. And so I've been missing that little thing called communication daily. Not just in His Word, like we talked about last week, where we're busting at the seams because we're in it and we're molting off this old skin of the flesh. If you remember that caterpillar story, He wants us to be there. And then that persistence is so important because I think the petition, the daily coming to God, affects our position in prayer. It changes us. It begins to transform us so that our petitions are more constant and our position is more devoted and sincere. And that petition and position lead us to a practice of prayer that I think and I believe God really desires from His kids. Hey, coming again to talk. That's awesome. I don't know about you, but when I've heard this story my whole life, I kind of didn't hear about why is this persistence? Why is this consistency so important? Because God's design is not to answer us in our time for our own reasons. Our life is not about us. And so he sees a bigger purpose. His plan is to make you and design you into the person he created you to be. So I have to and I want to come again and again and again because he's fine-tuning me, or he's saying, you know what, buddy? I'll wait till you come back. I don't know if he actually does that, but I think there's something there. Something there about growth that's mysterious. And maybe some of us, including myself, have missed it. I've seen the mysterious supernatural power of being in the Word consistently. I know it transforms life. And this week I've asked a few people, how has prayer, or how has constant, consistent prayer changed their life? And I believe there's a mystery to that as well, because it just does its work. Because you're drawing close and closer to God. So persistence is important in our prayer life, coming again and again, because God's design is quite different than ours. Well, the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, he goes on to explain this, and he paints the picture of the Pharisee. And usually in a story like this, the Pharisee would be the victor. He would be the champion. He would be the one that everyone's expecting the teacher to say, you like the Pharisee. Because the Pharisees were kind of on display. And it's pretty obvious when you read this story that, wow, that Pharisee's arrogant. That Pharisee is proud. That Pharisee isn't even really praying. He's just tooting his own horn. And then we see the tax collector, the person who wouldn't be elevated in the story, but Jesus elevates the person who has the right heart. It says, but the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven. He beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And Jesus says, I tell you, this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For all those who exalt himself will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. See, and maybe this is part of the learning of prayer, that God is shaping us, that he's reshaping us, that he's transforming us not only to his likeness, and that happens when we're in the Word, but also he's transforming us into his son or daughter, because we're getting to know his heart. And we're getting to understand that his design for us is so much deeper than what we know. Sometimes I think our prayers start at a particular place. And maybe we don't recognize that if we really look at this story, because again, I've heard it my whole life. I've read it and I think, well, I'm not the Pharisee. You know, obviously we're the tax collector in the story. And I think that's where we stay. I think that's where I've stayed sometimes, when I just say, God, I trust you. These are my desires. These are my wishes. These are the things I want. These are the justice. This is the justice I want. I want you to avenge me, Lord. And that's an interesting word. Because who does vengeance belong to? Vengeance belongs to the Lord. It's not ours. So when we think and we read in this passage that she was avenged, we think, oh, cool. God will be responsive. He'll be quick to settle the score. I like that, God. I'm going to leave that right on your lap, and I'm going to stay right where I am. which is exactly where He has not designed you to stay. And I'm not going to grow. What I'm actually saying is, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to. I like my position. There's a song that I can kind of relate to, and you probably can too. It's by Jaron Lowenstein. He's a country singer. And this is a song he wrote about prayer. And I think this is where our prayers sometimes start. I haven't been to church since I don't know when. Things were going great till they fell apart again. So I listened to the preacher as he told me what to do. He said, you can't go hating others who have done wrong to you. Sometimes we get angry, but we must not condemn. Let the good Lord do His job. You just pray for them. And then the chorus goes like this. I pray your brakes go out running down a hill. I pray a flower pot falls from a windowsill and knocks you in the head like I'd like to. Prayer. It's an amazing thing, but see, our life is not about us. God has this incredible idea of design for us, and it's seasonable to Him. It's right on time to Him. And if I just think in my arrogance and pride, I can just drop something and contain what I think is just. Keep in myself what I think vengeance should be. Think in my mind how I think God should do it. Then I'm going to stay there. But if I go back to my Lord every day, then my position changes. Even in my heart. Even what I think. Even how I hope. And it's mysterious. And it's glorious. But it's time to grow up. Not just being in the Word, but saying, God, you know, a week ago I dropped that on your lap, and you know what? I haven't even thought about it. I haven't even looked myself in the mirror since then. I haven't even contemplated if that was the right kind of prayer, because you know what? I failed to come back. I failed to come back. And the coming back really initiates this reality where I think God just sometimes can put up a mirror. Say, hey, son, glad you're back. Do you see yourself a little bit differently today? Yeah, God, you know, I prayed and I was hoping you'd do this, this, and this. Wow, God, I look just like that Pharisee. I wanted it for the wrong reasons. I couldn't even see it. And so we know what it's like to not have prayers answered. But are we going back? Are we being persistent? Is our position before God one of humility? And are we comprehending that His grace design for us is not just to simply know He can handle it, but to come back and have that conversation again and again and again so that we might grow up? I think that says it. Amen.